Welcome to this series of lessons where we look at geometry and how we can use SAP Variant Configuration to implement that geometry for common objects. So the next series of lessons we're looking at the cone. So if you like what you see, feel free to subscribe and like this YouTube video, and then you'll get notifications when we release the next one. So let's get started. We're going to start simply. We've got a cone, it has a height, it has a diameter, and from these two numbers combined with other elements in a formula we can calculate the volume. I've got the skeleton of the model set up, and what I'm doing now is just quickly adding the characteristics that we're going to need for the class. So we're creating a characteristic for pi and just typing in the value of pi. Next we'll just go through and add the volume, and we'll add the height and add the diameter as we go. But you can see in our skeleton I've already got the configuration profile created, and also I've got a constraint net created, and we'll get to that in a minute as we start building our formula. So the goal is, as I said at the beginning, is we want to calculate the volume of a cone. Okay, so we've got all our characteristics. And now we'll get to the fun part of creating our formula to calculate the values. So we're creating a constraint within our constraint net. So this one is called basically calculate volume, and we'll just give it a brief description of what it is, and we'll start in the editor. So what I like to do, we'll just comment what this constraint is doing at the top, so it makes it easier in the future. With the objects, in this case we're pointing to the class that contains the characteristics, and I'm using the where syntax. So I'm creating basically a short variable to represent each characteristic, so it just makes it easier to write the formula when we do the calculation. So I've got our volume, our diameter with V and D, and H for height. And then lastly, we're just referencing the pi characteristic. In the restrictions section, this is where we put in the formula to calculate the volume. And so I'm just using some shorthand in here to specify what the volume formula is. So normally we use radius, or a lot of textbooks will have radius as a calculation. So I'm using diameter because often that might be what the user would enter. So we just divide diameter by 2 and create the formula. So then in the inferences, all we do is refer to those things that we want to do, and we release and save it. And so next, let's test this out. So at the moment I haven't played with the display, so we've just got volume, height and diameter. There's our characteristics, and I'm just showing the pi setting. So if we put in the height of 100 and also the diameter of 100 and press enter, we get a calculation of the volume. And so that's fine. But what we can also do is go the other way around. So let's just take out the values that we've entered and change 1 to 200, and so the volume recalculates. Now this time what we'll do is take out the 200, take out the 100, and let's just set a volume, in this case 550,000, and then we'll just enter a height. So we'll enter the height of 150 and press enter, and the diameter is calculated automatically. So we can see that with our constraint it's multi-directional. As long as we've got two of the values, the third is always calculated. There's just a few important points I just want to cover off at the end. If you're not used to working with formulas and maths, then just refresh yourself on what's called BODMAS. So it gives you the sequence that things are processed within a formula. So normally anything within brackets is processed first, then anything to do with square root or to the power of second, and then you do your division and multiplication next, and lastly your addition and subtraction last. If your formula is not working correctly, then it could be that you haven't got brackets in the right place. SAP VC has its own syntax, so the main differences are for multiplication and division, and with square root to the power of, etc. So just remember the syntax. You might have to go to SAP Help just to check up on some of that. Also, just take care if you're transforming information. So often if you're following a textbook formula, it will talk about radius, and if you're working in diameters, just make sure you are converting it back to a radius. And lastly, just verify that your formula works independently of VC. So we've got our formula for volume here for a cone. Go on the web, you can find quick converters on there where you can put in the same values and get the calculation. So just as a double check to make sure your formulas work. So I'll close there. If you've liked what you've seen, then subscribe to the channel and be updated when new content comes out. So thank you for your time.